My blissful gorgeous self, Christianity and Islam have dominated the world during the last 1000 years to 1500 years. Both of them imposed their dominance over the world public through terror, torture, tyranny, trickery, treachery, taxation, and temptations. Yet both have suppressed all that history, my dear friends. History is an account of the past which should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But history is approved and permitted to be taught in the current world dominated by Muslims and Christians may be described as suppressio overi and suggestio falsi, or suppressing the truth and suggesting falsehood, fake. Let us examine Muslim history starting with Muhammad himself, the founder of Islam. Muhammad was born in 570 AD and he is said to have founded Islam in 622 AD when he was in his 52nd years of age. Muhammad died in 632 AD. That clearly proves that Muhammad was a Muslim only for last 10 years of his life. For the earlier 52 years, Muhammad himself was a non-Muslim. Yes, non-Muslims. So what then was his caste and what was his religion, my dear friends, and what was his name? Has the world been told about this? Does this not prove that the entire Muslim history, starting from the very non-Muslim name of Muhammad himself and his family, has been totally suppressed and obliterated, and a fake history has been concocted as its substitute? Christian history too is a fabrication, as can be judged from the very story of Jesus' crucifixion, my dear friends. Okay? Only a person guilty of rapes and murders and massacres would be sentenced to death by cruel crucifixion, my dear friends. Since Jesus is lauded as the holiest of the holy, how and why should he be sentenced to death by crucifixion? So, this cross-examination of Muslim and Christian bluffs proves that both Christianity and Islam are deceitful impositions enslaving gullible masses from generation to generation. They are a spiritual mass deception, my dear friends. That is truth, granted truth. So, my dear friends, apart from falsifying the family history of Muhammad and of the terror, torture, role of Islam, all Muslim countries throughout the world have banned the teachings and study of the pre-Islamic history of converted regions, my dear friends. The UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, must compel all Muslim member nations to teach all history from the earliest time up to date. It is a pity and a tragedy that not a single UNESCO member country seems to be aware of the total ban on the teachings of any pre-Islamic history of the countries converted to Islam. That is an educational advocacy, educational hypocrisy, remnant in Muslim countries, my dear friends. If any person in Muslim countries dares to suggest that their pre-Islamic history too ought to be taught, he not to talk of any. So, otherwise she will be burnt alive or stoned to death. UNESCO ought therefore to pass a resolution that to Muslim countries they be admitted as a UNESCO members unless it starts teaching its own pre-Muslim history and that of other Muslim countries too. For UNESCO, and all UNESCO members and countries and their representatives must be made aware of this responsibility of their currently all UNESCO members countries took upon UNESCO meetings only as splendid opportunities for foreign jaunts and drinks and dance rivalries at government expense. Yet another graphic proof of Islam smothering all its pre-conversion history is the shrouding of the 7-storied Kaaba temple in Mecca. In the city in Arabia with a gigantic black hood which is pulled down is likely to remove a gigantic saffron color stone temple which will be removed from there to somewhere else, my dear friends. Encyclopedia Britannica mentions under the Kaaba heading that the Kaaba considered 360 Vedic Sri Vigrahas, the Vedic deities, the Vedic idols. That is why none of the millions of Muslims who congregates at the Kaaba year to year is allowed even a glimpse of the gigantic Kaaba shrine hidden behind gigantic black curtains, my dear. Okay? That ideals of 360 Vedic gods and goddesses are enshrined inside The gigantic Kaaba edifice is further proved by the fact that all modern-day pilgrims, even after conversion to Islam, still adhere to their age-old pre-conversion Vedic tradition of taking a bath and then perambulating the Kaaba shrine 7 times. That 7 figures too has a Vedic significance. Even in English parlance, one talks of the 7th heaven, which is the highest strata in Vedic Sanskrit parlance. They are referred to as Saptatal, the 7 strata. So, there is nothing in the world which is not Vedic and Sanskrit, because they have been a part of human civilization from the very first generation. Consequently, so-called Muslims ought to realize that the term Muhammad and Ahmad, which they use as original names, are as proud suffixes or Sanskrit terms signifying a person with an inflated ego. Islam is a malpronunciation of the Sanskrit term Ishalayam, okay? Ishalayam gave birth to Islam, signifying the divine shrine, namely the 7-storied Kaaba temple. The Kaaba itself is a malpronunciation of the Sanskrit term Garbha, signifying the sanctorium, my dear friends. So-called Muslims would do well to recall their Vedic Sanskrit roots elaborated above. The same holds good for so-called Christians. Both Muslims and Christians have taught to realize that they are breakaway groups of Vedic culture. Their Vedic origin will come as a revelation to Muslims the moment they pull down the black curtains covering the Kaaba and pay homage to the 360 kilos pride. Those 360 idols represent the 360 days in the Islamic calendar, my dear friend. So, Encyclopedia Islamica mentions under the Kaaba heading that the Kaaba had 360 idols enshrined inside it. Compilers of that encyclopedia are to be informed that those 360 idols are still inside. What they been pulled out and smashed? There was no need to hide the Kaaba enshrined through. So they have been pulled out and smashed. There was no need to hide the Kaaba behind the black curtains and prevent entry to an inspection of that gigantic ancient temple, my dear friends. Okay?